All right, so thank you everybody for coming today for the task force meeting. As Will noted before we started the recording, we are still 4 members short from a quorum. And I apologize, if you're hearing dinging, I don't know how to mute my text messages while I'm on my phone for the Zoom. But we're short on a quorum. I guess just kind of hearing thoughts from people. Today was going to be a pretty light meeting, maybe a few minor updates, but nothing real substantive to discuss. So I guess what are people's thoughts since we don't have a quorum? Does it make sense to just adjourn? And I think we're back sometime early July, and everybody go enjoy their Friday, or I guess maybe get back to work. Or do people want to take a few minutes to at least discuss updates? I'm open to thoughts or suggestions from others.
Is there any chairs of the subcommittees that have updates that are exciting or pressing that they want to share, or presentations that they put together that they want to take a few minutes to share with the public? I guess.
So yeah, and I can at least speak on behalf of the remedies subcommittee. I believe we don't have any sort of an update. We're still in the preponderance of the evidence discussion. And in fact, I think we had to cancel our last meeting due to the Juneteenth holiday. So there's nothing new from the remedies end. And then Gina, you had led the last disqualification, so I'm not sure if there's any updates there, or the data analysis. I understand the data analysis work group is still working to analyze the newest data subset. So I'm not sure from the disqualification perspective or the just data subcommittee.
Yep. So we in the disqualification subcommittee, we got through first through 5th degree possession, and it was really super difficult. And so we stopped there because you weren't there, John wasn't there, and it was really tough. And so that alone took us an hour going through like the nuances of some of the sales charges included, like sales to minors, and so just calling even some of that straight property crimes. There wasn't I mean, we ended up mostly agreeing on it, but it was really hard to call a 2nd degree possession that's only or a 2nd degree sales that's only 6 grams of a people crime. But the wording in there is about sales to someone under 18 years of age. And so and some of the language is about school zones, and so 6 grams isn't very much to sell, but it's about who you sold to and where you sold it. And so we'll have to talk about it again at the next one. But they were really tough conversations. And so I was wishing the whole time that you and John were there to have those conversations. So we'll have to recap at the next one and then continue on, because we only got through the first 5 lines of that, like 021 to 025 or whatever.
Yeah, no, and I think John will be back next week, and I just got stuck in court. So
yeah, no, we get it, and it's not like we're done with 152, like it's ongoing. So, but that was just kind of a recap of what we did last week, so, or this week,
and
I guess.
I see Roy Cameron is here. Roy, any updates? I think, are you the chair of the data analysis group, if I remember correctly?
You are correct.
Any updates just to sort of tell the group as to where you guys are at or what you're doing, or had you prepared some fancy PowerPoint presentation to put all of us to shame for today?
Oh, no, it's not super fancy, but our work group did put together a small presentation based on our data work at our last meeting that I could share if you were willing, or Mr. Vogel, if you want to pull it to the master file, I can pull mine. Either way is good.
Mr. Cameron, it might be more convenient if you pull it up, actually. If that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you ready for that? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at it here. I am going to share my screen.
And you know what? One thing, Will, since we are essentially proceeding forward, we should at least do a call to order really quick before Mr. Cameron starts.
Certainly, Madam Chair. I've actually been taking a roll call as people came in, so I can actually read off who I'm seeing in here, and please shout out to me if somebody's not in here. I'm seeing Ms. Dawson, Mr. Esme, Ms. Evans, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Huntley, who had to duck out for a second, but I saw her, Mr. Irvin, Ms. Kaser, Mr. Kammer, Representative Robbins, Ms. Sherlock, and Ms. Williamson.
All right, and are we still short on a quorum?
Yeah, we're currently at 11 members. We need 2 more.
Okay, all right, thank you. But at least like I said, I just wanted to make sure we were clear for the recording on that. All right, Mr. Cameron, I'm really sorry that I interrupted you, and I will actually mute myself so you can talk.
Okay. Thank you. So we just have a few slides here that we put together. These come from the data in data set 4. And what we have here in our first slide is just looking at reconsideration requests determined eligible to work. And again, we have eligible to work in quotes because this is kind of a collapsed sort of set of variables that DHS had provided us. We said, after they broke it down into all these very specific areas, can you simplify it for us and tell us essentially which of these individuals were determined eligible to work in a licensed facility and which ones were determined ineligible to work. So one of the things that we've been doing in our data analysis subcommittee is, we are constantly interested in, race, ethnicity, disparities and such. So what we have here is 2018, and we've got it simplified for you down here right below the pie charts. But in 18, determinations of eligibility to work based on a reconsiderations request were similar for African-American and white individuals. So we didn't see any significant disparity there. But when you take a look for our individuals who identify as Native American, we did see a bit more disparity there. So we're looking at only 56% being determined eligible to work and 44% being determined ineligible to work. When you compare that to our individuals who are white and African-American, that's 29%, 31% ineligible to work. So a bit of a disparity there. So one of our questions was, did that hold true in 2019? It's hard to determine if there's a trend here without at least, 3 more years of data, but we just, compared it against 2019 just for curiosity. And to be quite honest, we didn't see that same level of disparity holding true into 2019. You can see some slight variances here, but generally in 2019, it ranged between 56 and 70% eligibility to work. The lowest eligibility determinations in 2019 were for individuals who identified as African American, or who were identified as African American in the DHS data sets. So that's the first piece we spent some time taking a look at. We thought the pie charts were probably the simplest way to display it, just to look from identity to identity to identity to identity. So that's one piece we took a look at. The other piece that we took a look at was the task force as a whole has been looking at the classifications of known, people, known property, known substance, known maltreatment. Based on the current breakdown we had, when we did this a week ago Thursday, we just wanted to see, were there really any big differences by those crime and conduct types? And long story short, not a whole lot. So eligible to work determinations in 2018 ranged from 72% all the way up to 77%. And there wasn't a big difference between people, property, substance, maltreatment. Our hypothesis was that there was probably going to be a bigger difference, for known substance, but it's really no difference. It's right there in that same range. For 2019, we're looking at a range of 68, 69, 70%. known maltreatment, we've got a much smaller, number to work with there. So I wouldn't be too fixed on that particular number being, 44%, because that can vary greatly with just, a few individuals. But our big takeaway here is based on how the crimes have been classified into these 4 categories currently. We don't see a big difference in terms of those being deemed eligible to work. So that's where we spent our work last week. Hope that's intriguing or interesting in some way. We just kind of keep combing through the data and looking at it and trying to break it down and make sense of it. But any questions for me or our subcommittee that we could try to answer?
Doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you were very clear and concise.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you. I will stop sharing then.
I do
Here's
have one.
Jack.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I just want to sort of clarify and then maybe tee up something to think about further. These categories here, I also think that my hypothesis would have been that we would have seen some variation with maybe people crimes being higher, maybe substance crimes being lower. So that is interesting to me. But we are looking at basically all categories, misdemeanors through felonies are all grouped into one for this analysis. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So. And if you were teeing something up, was there a?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
To look at, felony versus different levels.
Yeah, I guess I would be wondering is, if we just looked at felonies as a subcategory or misdemeanors as a subcategory, would we still see this, this sort of similarities between the classifications?
I think we visually looked at and Mr. Vogel, Ms. Evans, anyone else who was there, I think we visually looked at substances in that regard, and we didn't see a big difference, but we didn't put any slides together, but we could certainly go back and take a closer look at that. Mr. Vogel, looked like you were going to say something there. I'll yield to you.
Oh, just to note, Mr. Kammer, Mr. Esme, that the data set that the group worked on last week didn't actually break down crimes or conduct by misdemeanor, by what category it was, misdemeanor, felony, etc.
And I am obviously thinking of something else that we looked at with substances. So.
Yeah, no, I think Mr. Chair, you're thinking of data set 3, table 6, which does do that breakdown.
Yep. Okay.
Well,
Yeah, and I was actually expecting to see a higher rate of eligible to work for substances and a lower rate of eligible to work for known people and known maltreatment. And so this chart for me was surprising. I guess I'll just say that.
So one thing that might be going on there is that I would suspect that the vast majority of substance disqualifications are felonies, just based on the way our statute has the majority of them being felonies, whereas I think you're going to get, the people crimes, a lot of those are going to be misdemeanors, 5th degree assaults, 5th degree domestic assaults that are, not they're people crimes, but they're not significant injury crimes. And so we might be comparing lots of felonies within the substance category against lots of a higher variation of misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and felonies in the other 2 categories.
So not really apples to apples is what you're saying.
Right.
I wonder how we could find out. Like, I wonder if it's possible to pull that apart a little bit, because I would really like to figure out the substances and get them pulled out properly.
I'd say let's put it on our agenda for our next data subcommittee meeting and just take a look at what we have, see what we need to request to do it. And then if we need more data, Ms. Williamson, we'll connect with the data subcommittee, and we'll make a formal request and move forward. So
that'd be great. And just so everyone knows what I'm talking about here, so with the substance crimes, first through fifth degree, for most of the history of those statutes have all been felonies, and there's a couple of like petty misdemeanor and misdemeanor crimes that fall outside of them, but they're not even DHS disqualifying offenses in the first place. In the relatively recent drug reform bill, that was 2016, 2017, something like that, there was a gross misdemeanor fifth degree drug category created for trace amounts, like a dose or less than a dose of a substance. And we see that sometimes, but still the vast majority of DHS disqualifying drug crimes that get charged in criminal court are just going to start off as felonies anyway.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Esme, and Mr. Kammer, I did make a note for the to include that on the next data analysis subcommittee agenda. But glancing at table 6 of data set 3, yeah, it looks like Mr. Esme's hypothesis is borne out by the data. That's the table ranking, or that's the table giving how many disqualifications and for what evidentiary standards there were for each crime or conduct by category. And if we look at 2018, for instance, pretty much it's the 15-year disqualifications that are dominated by fifth degree controlled substance, third degree, et cetera. You don't really see significant numbers of those crimes in the 10 or 7-year disqualifications.
Thanks for that, Will.
I suppose I should also note, just to clarify, by which I mean to muddy further with more detail, that the work that the data analysis group was doing last week was on people who received a disqualification and then applied for some sort of remedy, set aside or challenging the correctness of the determination, that sort of thing, which is a minority of people who received a disqualification in the first place, and not the same group of people as the total DQ group, which is what we see in table 6 of data set 3.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Kammer, and thank you, Will. All right, so we've heard an update from remedies, the disqualification, the data analysis group. Are there any updates from the actual data subcommittee?
Good day. Sorry, I was having a little issues with sound earlier, or excuse me, audio. There's no updates besides that we were able to formally submit the additional data requests that have been given to us.
All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Perfect, thank you. So if there, I guess, unless anybody has any specific update or any burning desire to talk about anything else, I guess we can probably adjourn at this point, and I know the subcommittee chairs will meet, and obviously we'll definitely, if there's any more updates, then we'll talk about the status of these meetings, because I think right now there's just a lot of internal work going on in the various subcommittees that there's not quite as much at this point to bring back to the big group, but I think people are all working hard and doing what we need to do. We're just not, it's just less for the large group. Yeah. All right, so I'm not really hearing any objections. So at this point, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming on this lovely Friday.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.